Development of Language Center of IAIN Padangsidimpun, and I very appreciate the speaker with us today. The speaker will be three speakers. The Honorable Prof. Sira Hostetler from New Mexico University, Albuquerque University. This name, I don't know, Albuquerque is any related to the Alfonso Albuquerque. It's a prominent adventurer and prominent sailor that came to Indonesia before. And then I thanks also from our junior Prof. Sojuangon from University, now pursuing his higher study for PhD in Australia, and also to the speaker Inaya, yeah. Inaya. Yeah, actually, this program is very, important for us, and the title, the digitalization of teaching and learning during the pandemic. Actually, the pandemic of COVID-19 make us so troubled, and we never imagined actually our campus with 8,000 students and the weight of the campus 19 hectares. It's a very something like nightmare, like bad dream to be empty because of the pandemic. If you are coming to the campus in the evening, you will find nothing except the presence of security. We never imagined this happened. But anyway, because of the pandemic, we have to stop our activities of academic agenda at our campus. Anyway, our students should go home with their parent to the village, and then maybe it takes time already 1 month, no academic agenda, no teaching and learning in the class of our campus. And it make us have to work from home, and we never think that we find a good way by electronic or online method to teach our students and to run our academic activities. Actually, the world right now has transformed the method of social interaction. Maybe around 5 years already, business going digital. And if you are going to take a taxi, you need not to pay by cash, but by online. And also you are going to make an order for a food, you can do it only by online. Anyway, when we are facing the problem of pandemic, actually, we refer to the online, even though it is already started on land, and we are informed already since 3 years about the online method of teaching, but we never applied and implemented until the pandemic came and attack us and attack our activities and program, and we can refer to the method of online, and it is something like the sign of the civilization progress nowadays. And may we say that it is something like a blessing in disguise. We can implement what we have studied before, we have learned, and I can say maybe it is very relevant to refer the theory of a historian and philosopher of British Arnold Quincy ever said in his book, a study of history. It is a theory of challenge and response. When the challenge is tough and it triggers the people to think over and over what strategy have to make to fulfill his need. And it happened to us right now because the challenge of pandemic is very serious for us. The contagious and infectious pandemic, during the outbreak of pandemic, we just stay home, work from home, and also our children is very get tension and under pressure when they have to follow their learning. They don't go to school but stay home until so far. Like my younger son, something like under tension because of never go anyway, and he miss his teacher and he miss his friend to socialize. Anyway, they have to follow their learning online at home. Again, I thank all speakers in the committee. I hope and I wish this webinar will run very well, and we get much advantage from this webinar. And we have informed that our campus right now maybe become having learning how to transform the method of learning to from here. Now later on, we have to upgrade the quality of our web, to upgrade the instrument of our web, and maybe right now it changed our mind that we need to focus the building to upgrade the building so much, but now we have to upgrade building the web and all the things related to the quality of web, to upgrade the quality method of online maybe. And then that's all I can say. Okay, good luck to follow this webinar. I close my speech by saying Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and officially this program open. Thank you.
Waalaikumsalam
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you so much for the Honorable Director of IAIN Padangsidimpun, and we really hope that the expectation is met in today's webinars. All right, we're gonna move on to the next session, which is the presentation by the first speaker, who is Sierra Hostetler. But before that, I would like to give a little bit of intro about our speaker. So Sierra Hostetler is from Albuquerque, New Mexico, United States of America. She is a teacher of Spanish, and she has been teaching Spanish as a world language for over 8 years now, which is quite a dedication in and of itself. Before the presentation starts, I would like to let everyone know that you're always welcome to type in your question in the chat box in your Zoom control panel. We'll bring them up during the presentation, and we will also have several minutes of Q&A session right afterwards. All right, Sierra Hostetler, are you ready?
Yes.
Yes, all right. So I'll give the time over to Sierra. Please, Sierra, you're welcome to present your materials.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Salam alaikum.
Good morning. Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Morning. I'm going to talk today about what the last semester has been like for me as a teacher in the United States. It sounds like there are some similarities to what you guys are experiencing in Indonesia, but I might have some differences as well. I don't know what all you can see. I'm going to give you a little bit of context. You heard about me a little bit already, but I think my experience is formed by the fact that I teach a language, which is kind of another obstacle to online teaching. So for those of you who teach other subjects, there might be differences in what our experiences are like. but for people who teach a language, I understand the difficulty of teaching a language online because that's what I've been doing this semester. I work at a small charter school in New Mexico. New Mexico is this red state down here, and it is in the southwest of the United States. It's a public school, so students can attend for free, but it is pretty small, which is different from most schools in the United States. And I should also mention that every state in the United States has its own education department, so their policies are completely different, and how each state has handled the COVID-19 pandemic is different for everyone. For most schools in the United States, including mine, the school year begins in August and ends in May. And so and my school is broken up into 2 semesters. So during the second semester, about halfway through is when COVID-19 became a problem in the state where I live. And so on March 12, we received information from our state's governor, from our policymakers, saying that we were not going to have in-person school for 2 weeks. So most schools in my area stopped teaching during that time, but my school was a little bit prepared for this. And so we did not stop teaching. We immediately transitioned to online schooling. So we had one day on March 13 where we could talk to students and meet with them in person and check out laptops to them and give them paper resources and things that they might need. And then the following Monday, we were online for 2 weeks. And then at the end of that 2 weeks, the state made an announcement that the remainder of the school year was going to be online. So my school was very happy that we started online because it wasn't so difficult to make that transition. We kind of had those 2 weeks to figure out some of the difficulties, whereas other schools in my state weren't expecting the schools to be closed for the rest of the semester. And so they had a lot more difficult time getting all of the technology issues figured out. The New Mexico Public Education Department did use some ideas and some policies made by other states, including Kansas. And I have a link here for people who are interested in following it. I can provide this slideshow so that you can access these links if you're interested. It's just a lot of detail about making sure that students' needs are met, especially students who are in special education programs, who might have learning disabilities or physical disabilities, and other struggling students. So we relied heavily on some other states, but then we came up with our own plan, which is this second link here. And the 3 things that were really important to me from that plan were a focus on essential learning. So instead of making sure that we're teaching all of the benchmarks and lessons within each unit, we just needed to make sure that our students had overall general knowledge of the topic so that they could move on to the courses for the next year. And as you can imagine and probably experienced, that's incredibly difficult. It's really hard to decide what parts of your curriculum you can skip and what parts of your curriculum students don't need to know in order to move on to the next course in their curriculum schedule. But it was helpful for me that the state said that this is what I needed to do. I needed to focus on essential learning. That way I didn't worry too much about all of the little things that I think are important for students to learn, but that we just weren't able to do with the online model. The second thing that I really liked about our state's document was a focus on social emotional wellness. So a lot of students, it's so important, the school is so important to provide that social connection for students. And also during the pandemic, a lot of students were experiencing anxiety, or their home situations were not safe or comfortable places for them to be during the day. A lot of parents also were trying to work from home. And so we worked really hard to think about the social and emotional well-being of our students. And I think that was really neat to see from a policymaker, because they usually don't seem to get that about educators. And so I appreciated that. And the third piece that I really appreciated about this document was the idea of grace towards all. So that includes teachers who were struggling to make this transition work. Our students, we needed to be very, we needed to give them all of the allowances that they possibly could need and not worry so much about due dates and not worry so much about those kinds of things, about allowing them to redo assignments and retake tests, whereas we might be strict about that under normal circumstances. With this different circumstance, we really wanted to extend grace towards everyone. That also includes students' siblings and family members and parents, because teachers really started to rely on parents to help teach the curriculum, and we needed to keep in mind that that wasn't necessarily going to work with the United States culture. So my school ended up having online classes from March 16th through March 22nd, and my school's called East Mountain High School, and every school or district needed to make a continuous learning plan, and that's this link. It's a pretty short document, but it addressed a few concerns that our students at our local school were facing. One was that some students did not have access to technology. And I mentioned earlier that my school was able to check out some laptops and some Chromebooks to some students, but some of our technology at the school was not in really good shape either. And so that wasn't always ideal. And even if students had a device, they might not have access to the internet at home, or they might not have access. They might be sharing their device with other family members, and so they might not be able to meet at a particular time that we wanted them to meet, those kinds of things. A really impactful policy that my school put in place was that they only allowed 30 minutes per class per day. So I'm used to seeing my students for 90 minutes every day in person. I have 90-minute classes with each class, and then I almost always assign homework. So that means approximately 2 hours of my students' day go towards my class under normal circumstances. But with the pandemic, all of a sudden, in total, students were only allowed to spend 30 minutes on my class. And that's because they have 3 other classes, and the state required no more than 3 hours of online schooling per kid. And I really like that for some reasons, because I think this could have turned into a real nightmare for a lot of students, to, especially the really young kids, to have to be online all day, especially when they have other family responsibilities and things like that. But again, it's so hard to cut down my curriculum. And so not only was I not able to teach in the way that I was used to teaching, and not only were my students not used to learning on this online model, we had to adjust to that, but we also had to adjust to this idea of only 30 minutes per day. And so that made it really hard to cover everything I thought was necessary to cover for my class. And also made it really hard for me to form those social emotional connections with my students and answer their questions and work with them individually, and all the other things that we know as teachers are good practices. My school also changed our grading scale to pass-fail, and I got a lot of negative reactions from students about that. I think that was the right choice for my school, because it's so hard to be sure that you're teaching fairly and you're grading equitably and things like that with a new model that we're all adjusting to. So I think this was the right move, but it did affect a lot of my students in negative ways and in positive ways. I mostly heard complaints about the negative, though, from students who were high achievers in the past. And so they always tried to get a grade that was better than most of their classmates. And now all of a sudden they felt like they didn't have that external motivation to do their very best. I know that's problematic in some ways, but that was the feedback that I got. And that kind of leads to the next point. I think my school was really good about soliciting feedback from both students and their families in the form of surveys and discussion panels. At the very end of the school year, we asked about 10 students to meet with all of the teachers over Zoom, of course, And we asked them some questions about their experience, and I think they were very honest about what was difficult and what was helpful, and some ideas about how we can improve online learning going forward. So a lot of the opinions that I'm sharing today actually come from students and their feedback that I've received. So looking forward, we have to decide what's going on with school, and it's really not been decided yet. Again, it goes state by state, but nationally, the United States is relying on the Center for Disease Control and Prevention to provide us with some guidance about whether schools should reopen in the fall or not. And basically the answer is no, that schools shouldn't reopen in the fall. So we're going to be online again, probably. New Mexico has said that we're going to have a hybrid model. And so we're kind of trying to figure out what that means. It looks like probably it will be each student will come to school for 1 day a week. And we might have one group of students on Monday and a different group of students on Tuesday, etc. But that hasn't all been figured out yet. Excuse me. So we are waiting to see what happens with the COVID numbers, and we are waiting to see what the Center for Disease Control and Prevention has to say. Give me 1 second. Excuse me. So we have received some economic support from the US government. They have passed it's called the CARES Act, is what we refer to it as. And that will help us buy some more technology for students who do not have technology at home. And it will help provide sanitizing supplies to schools. Because if we do go back, even as a hybrid model, we will likely have to do a lot of disinfecting of every surface that we touch, and we won't be able to share pencils and help students with school supplies and things like that, which will be a really different experience. My school has already said that if we do go with the hybrid model, then students will have the opportunity to choose to do exclusively online classes. I think that's really nice to give students and family that freedom and that option, but I think that sounds really complicated as a teacher to teach some students only online and then to have some students to provide in-person support to. I want to be able to make sure that I'm being equitable and that the students who are able to come to school are not receiving more help and learning better because of their situation. But I kind of fear that that will end up being the case because it's just so difficult to teach online. So to that end, here are some of the things that I'm working on to improve. I already mentioned that technology and internet access is an obstacle for many of my students, and that with additional funding and some organizations at school level, we're hoping to be able to make that work. The other thing is technology skills have been kind of an issue for my students and for many teachers too, of course. A lot of students, even if they have access to the technology, they're not super comfortable with using all the different websites that we are asking our students to use. And it's been really interesting. I'll mention later in more detail. I used Google Classroom for my class, and I thought it was going to be a really smooth transition because my students had already been doing Google Classroom all year. But a lot of students couldn't figure out how to submit work over Google Classroom. So they were doing the work, but not getting it to me. And we had to work out some of those kinks. And I imagine that that will continue to be an issue in the fall. So I'm trying to brainstorm some ways that I can teach students the technology without sucking too much time up. Because again, I think I'll be limited to 30 minutes a day. And I don't want to use up all that time teaching technology when I really need to be accessing my curriculum. The other thing is family responsibilities. A lot of students need to take care of younger siblings when they're at home, or I mentioned that their parents might be working at home or might be recently unemployed, and so they're going through some other difficulties there. And I want to be understanding of that. I also will have some family difficulties because I have a 2-year-old son who will be at home with me, and he's starting to not want to take a nap anymore. And I don't know how I'm going to navigate that going forward when I need to be teaching and also with him because he deserves my attention too. So it's going to be a challenge for teachers as well. As always, I'm going to struggle with figuring out how to address special needs students, students who are learning English in school. They might speak a different language at home, so they might not be ready to just understand everything that I say the first time that I say it over the internet, and also other struggling students who might be struggling with my curriculum for other reasons. And again, the social emotional wellness issue is still in the back of my mind. I want to be able to build a classroom culture where students are comfortable speaking to me and asking me questions, where they can build friendships amongst each other. And I think that's going to be really difficult to do online. So I'm starting to think of ways that I can make that happen. This may be some obvious stuff, but it's kind of some guidelines that worked really well for me and some things that I've seen people online talk about as being helpful. Just being organized, laying out all your expectations for students has been really transformative for me. This screenshot is of my Google Classroom, and you can see that I have each day dated. So I posted something every single day for my students to work on. Some teachers posted one thing and said, have this done by Friday. You shouldn't spend more than 30 minutes a day on it, but if you stay on track, then it should be easy to complete. I heard feedback from students that that was overwhelming. Students, at least at the age that I teach, which I teach students who are about 14 to 18 years old, and they were still learning how to stay organized. And so they asked that I post something every day, and that worked for me, but I know that it depends on what you teach, how difficult that is. That ties in with the consistency as well, just making sure that I posted something every day. Even if I posted one thing that I thought would take 2 hours, I would still make a post the next several days saying, remember, look back at Monday's post and work on that. Communication was super important, communication with the parents, communication with the students in all kinds of different ways. Nourishing relationships, making sure that students are still comfortable with you, are still want to ask help about the curriculum, and also want to maintain a relationship with you on somewhat of a professional personal relationship, I think is important too for teachers. And I mentioned this several times, but I think constantly seeking feedback is a way to meet several of these goals. It is communication, it is nourishing the relationships, and it makes me a better teacher. Here are some tools and resources. I made a very long list and ended up deleting my very long list because I think a lot of that really just pertained to people who are teaching languages. So it really depends on your content area. But here are some general tools and resources for people. I think having a learning management system was really helpful for me. If your school does not provide one, then that might be something that you want to suggest or look into. I use Google Classroom. I've heard really good things about Canvas. For synchronous teaching, when you want to meet with students in person or live meetings, I used Google Meet. There are some nice things about Zoom. You can do breakout rooms so that students can have little discussions, and then you can bring everybody back together as a group. So I plan to explore that a little bit more before the fall semester begins. For asynchronous teaching, I did do a lot of recording of videos of myself and then posting them. And I mostly did that because the son was home with me. And so it was very difficult for me to meet with students one-on-one or meet with students in a live way. Loom was really nice for making recordings because I could show my screen and my face at the same time. It's free if you only make up to 25 videos, which wasn't a problem for me yet. A lot of my colleagues found instructional videos on Khan Academy and used those as supplemental teaching materials. And then of course, I also just recorded myself on my cell phone and uploaded it to YouTube for students to access that link. For practicing content, I really like Flipgrid. That might be kind of a language teacher thing, but I know it's used in a lot of other content areas too. So Flipgrid is you can post a video of yourself or something written as a prompt, as a question, and then students have to record an answer and post it. So it's a nice way to make sure everyone is participating in a discussion. And there are all kinds of limits and minimums and maximums that you can apply to that website too. A lot of my colleagues used Edpuzzle to provide a lot of interesting ways for students to engage online. And one that might not be perfect for everyone, but I just learned about and I really liked it, was Goose Chase. And that's if students have smartphones, or if they're able to work in teams with smartphones, then they are able to record, it's like a scavenger hunt. So you can say, find something blue, and they can go out and take a picture of something blue. And then it looks kind of like social media stream. And so that was fun. We tried that as a staff activity with my school. And that was really kind of a neat way to stay in touch with everybody. With family communication, I have a constant contact account, so I can make my emails look kind of like newsletters and make them look kind of professional, and I think that's been appreciated. Obviously, you have to keep in mind that some parents are not going to be accessing email, and so I do need to do phone calls and other ways to contact families as well. I'm lucky because I work with a team of administrators who are really good at contacting family members if I have tried and have been unable to get in touch. Speaking of contact information, this is how you can get a hold of me if you have any further questions that don't get addressed during the Q&A, or if you want to reach out for something else. If you have any ideas for me, I'd love to hear them. And so I guess at this point we can open it up for questions.
Thank you so much, Sierra. Now we're gonna move on to the Q&A session, and we're gonna pick up 2 questions from the audience. It looks like I have a question here. The question is, how do you deal with the psychological pressure of being, expected to be a good teacher during this time of crisis? Because obviously it's super overwhelming for not just for students, but also for teachers. So how do you deal with that?
So I mentioned that one of the state's policies was grace. And I think that was really helpful for me because I knew my principal and I knew my license was not on the line, and I knew my principal wouldn't be upset with me if there were some days that I was just a bad teacher, frankly. But going forward, because I anticipate continuing with online schooling, I think you just need to have relationships with students and be open and honest and say, this is really hard for me. Do you guys have any suggestions for me? And that's how I kind of deal with it. I try to be very open with my students, and I've found that they spend a lot of time making me feel better. And I try not to put them in a situation where they feel like they have to do that. But if I come to them and ask for their advice or ask how I can help them better, I've noticed that my students are usually pretty good about telling me what's working for them and what isn't working for them. And that kind of usually puts my head straight. But it is going to be hard. And I will continue to feel like I am under pressure and that I'm not meeting my curriculum goals. And I think it's okay to know that you're not going to be meeting your own goals, and you're going to feel like you're not as good at teaching as you want to be, and you just do your best.
Right. Okay. All right. So it looks like we have someone who wanted to ask you directly, Sierra, if that's okay. And
Sure.
that Irwan Saleh Siregar, Mr. Admin, can we have an access for Irwan Saleh Siregar to ask the questions directly?
Can I
Irwan
start?
Saleh, you can ask the questions. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Hello, my name is Irwan Saleh Siregar. I am a teacher of elementary school, which is a private elementary school. Yes, today all of us getting a big deal that we never imagined before. And yeah, as a teacher, as a private teacher in a private school, we teacher get the monthly salary if the parents give the tuition, I mean the school fee, right? So we cannot get the salary if they don't pay the tuition. But in other side, it is impossible to the parents to give the school fee or the tuition while they cannot get a maximum of facilities from the school. And yeah, it is like so difficult to the elementary student with they are still young, they are not allowed to have a mobile phone with them to have a online class like the apa, the the students of high school or of the university school as the university student. So we've been thinking about this problem, and we we are at at the moment we are really confused what is the best way to give them the access to the online classes while they are not allowed to use the mobile phone because they are still young. So what is the best solution for children, which is, as I said before, they are not allowed to use the mobile phone like the high school students does. Thank you very much.
That sounds like an incredibly difficult situation. I'm sorry that you're dealing with that. I am not an expert on elementary school students, and so I'm sure that there are some better answers out there. But what I know we're doing for my high school students who don't have access to technology is we are making handouts. So we're giving them paper work to do. That feels very, it feels like you're not accessing that social emotional well-being stuff, you know. And so I've heard some stories of teachers who handwrite little notes to all of their to all of their students, and so they still have that personal connection, and they're able to communicate in writing on paper in that way. And I think that's a really creative way to work around it. But yeah, I mean, if you can't communicate with your students in person physically, and if you can't communicate with your students with technology, I think you just have to find another way. And I think giving them packets of papers to work on is the first solution that comes to mind for me, but might not be the best solution. I think that's something worth thinking about. But I wish I had a better answer for you. That's a really difficult situation.
How does it work for you, Irwan Saleh? Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
All right. Now we're going to move on to the next question. We have something similar here. So is there ever any case where you have to deal with limited facilities such as networks or technological limitations in New Mexican settings? How does it work in your schools here?
Can I get a clarification about, are you asking if teachers can access the technology or when students cannot access the technology?
When the students cannot have access to technologies.
Yeah, so in my school, it's what I just mentioned as a recommendation as well. In my school, if students cannot access the technology, then we do give them paperwork that they can hopefully learn the curriculum from. And that's so difficult because, you know, it's difficult to learn from a textbook, especially if you're a young kid. So that's not always the greatest way to do it, but that is how my school has been handling it. I will also say that luckily we have had a lot of support from internet companies and from the government to help provide technology to students. So I'm hoping that in the fall, that is not too much of an issue for us. But that has been our solution so far, is just to give people paper and hope that they can learn from it.
All right. So this is probably the last question, Sarah. So
Okay.
this is from Akmal. She wanted to know how you make your online learning as fun as possible to your students.
That is a really important question because learning should be fun. And I think especially when students are at home and there are other things they want to do, it is really hard for them to motivate themselves to work on school. And so I think this goes back to your content area as well. As a language teacher, there are a lot of online language games students can play. I encourage Duolingo. I encourage the use of all those fun apps. I encourage students to watch movies on Netflix in the language that I teach and things like that. So it feels really easy for me to kind of tap into students' interests that way because of my content area. But I think there are websites out there that make learning fun too, regardless of your content area. I think Flipgrid is great because students are talking to each other. Students love talking to each other, right? I think it's important to have some FaceTime with students if you're able to. If you're able to do a live Zoom meeting or a Google Meet or something like that, then you can play all kinds of games. And so I try to use the games that I use for in-person classes, I try to make those happen online. And sometimes it's just impossible. But a lot of times I'm able to modify them. And so we can still have fun online. So I haven't done, for my classroom personally, I haven't made a lot of big changes to the kinds of fun games and activities that we do because I've been able to transfer those onto online platforms. But I think there are websites, Edpuzzle's another one, and there are a lot of websites out there that provide game-based learning and some ways that you can interact and still have fun with your students.
All right. I hope that answered your questions, Akmal. And is there anything else that you wanted to cover before a wrap up, Sierra?
No, nothing in particular. I appreciate being asked to do this. I think it's really important that we unite internationally because we're all going through this right now. And so I think it's wonderful that all of you joined and are trying to improve your teaching, and I'm sure I could learn a lot from you guys too.
Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure having you here. I wish we could work again in the future, hopefully. And I think that's the end for Mrs. Sierra Hostetler's session. Let us say all goodbye. Thank you so much for joining us today again. I'll talk to you later. Goodbye, Sierra.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye. All right, now we're gonna move on to the second speaker, Haifa Inaya. Haifa Inaya, are you here?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Ready? Yes, I can hear you, girl. All right, so just a little bit of introduction. Haifa Inaya graduated from the United States of America in 2017, and she's gonna be talking about her perspectives about the digitalization of teaching and online learning during this time of crisis from the perspective of a media practitioner, right, Sierra? Sorry, Haifa.
Yeah.
All right, let's give the time over to Haifa to present her materials. But before that, I would like to remind everyone to please kindly mute yourself so that the discussion can be more conducive. Time and place is yours, Haifa. Go ahead.
First of all, hi everyone. Thank you, Leah, for the very kind introduction. We actually met when we are on our Fulbright program. Leah go to New Mexico, and I'm staying in Boston for 2 years. So it was a very great experience. I love it there. And then just a little bit about my background. I was a journalist for 5 years, and then when I was in the US, I learned a lot about how the media played out in there. And so when I come back, I decided to start my own startup. The idea is like I get the inspiration when I really in the US, because I see like how liberal and how there's just like so many different variation of of media business in there. So and then we see in Indonesia the media situation is not that there's not that many kinds, like not as much as like in the US. So that's when I decided to create this new platform. So just also before I get into my my presentation, maybe I also would like to tell everyone that I'm not gonna probably talk so much from the education perspective, but I do have a lot of my subscribers are students and high school students and university students, and they told me like how and our survey also shows that how our media situation or how our contact had helped them to learn when they cannot go to school or to the university. So maybe to begin, I will share my screen and sorry. Yeah, I cannot share my screen. It says you disabled me to do so. Hi, Leah, I cannot share my screen.
Let me talk to the admin guy, okay? Just hold on a second. So while we're doing the setup, I would like to let everyone know that if you have questions, post them in the chat box in your Zoom control panel. We will bring them up during the presentation and after the session is over.
Okay, here you go. So, hi everyone. This is my startup that we just launched on June last year. So it's only 1 year. So the name is Catch Me Up. The idea is to deliver news directly to your inbox. So if you subscribe every day at 6, you're gonna receive an email. So this is the idea. So Catch Me Up is like this is in the US. It's there's a lot of already numerous this kind of email newsletter, but in Indonesia we are actually the first one. When we really just focusing on creating the content for email, and then we're targeting on Indonesia's digital native because from the data from the Ministry of Informatics, it's it shows that like 99% of Indonesian, they're very well connected to internet. But also I noticed that there's not so many people that get informed about the, sorry, about the issues that going on around them, just from simple things like what's the government do, or how does the COVID situation in Indonesia right now. Like normally people, they don't really get the full picture or the full idea of the news. So I decided to create this information where you can get everything in one email. So yeah, that's the first. And also because we're so the idea is when you subscribe, you can get an email every day during the weekdays at 6 p.m. WIB Jakarta time. And it's also covered everything: economy, international issues, national issues, and now because of COVID, there's also a lot of coverage about COVID. And yeah, we started this because we send the email at 6 because clearly that 9% of millennials, when they woke up, they just open their phone, check whatever they have in their inbox. So that's how we come up with the idea. And so this is the news that we used to write. So it's very conversational, and it's also like had the question and answer setting. So it's very easy to follow for students. And also for university students, and it's also, the wording is also very casual, so they can just like find it very easy to digest. So the reason we do that is that, again, because with so many news platform everywhere, people tend to like, there's just so many news, and sometimes you don't have time to just keep up or to just follow up with the news. So we make it like just in one email, you can get all the news that you need in there. So it will be easier and less news searching for you, because we're gonna do that. And also shorter time. You only need to read the email for like 7 or 10 minutes, and then you're done. You get all the ideas, at least the 5W and 1H. It's way easier. And it's also actual because we send it every day from Monday through Friday. first thing in the morning at 6. So mostly the news that we covered is from the previous day. So it's very actual, and then it's enough to cater to your news needs for the day. So this is also how the advertisers can see us, because with email marketing we can tell like how people open our email and or they see our marketing or our ads, that kind of thing. And it's also very non-retrusive, so you can just see or not, like there's no, like if you open the website there's a lot of pop-ups and there's a lot of distraction, but on emails like there will be no distraction because you can just read through everything. So that's the thing. And also right now we are currently have more than 30,000 subscribers. We're actually nearly to 40,000 now. With every day we have more than 200 new subscribers. But during the COVID, like the number is decreased a little bit, like 120, 150 or like 100, but still a very rapid growth compared to any other startup. And also we have a very high interaction with our subscribers, because since we make it very casual, people can just like jump in and ask like, hey, what's your take on this, or what is the what's your take on this issue or that issue. So it's kind of like very different with how we see the media, the conventional media right now, because like in Indonesia it's very one-sided, just one way. Like if you read the news and then that's it, you cannot really comment to the media, or you cannot really talk to the company. But here, sorry. So yeah, I'm sorry about that. There's a little distraction. So yeah, we also have a very high open rate for 40%. And then next, yeah, this is our numbers. Like we have now nearly 40,000 subscribers and with open rate of 45%. And gender-wise, we also have an equal number of like female and male. Also, people who reads email, they're mostly like working or like first jobbers. But it appears to us that that our consumer grows younger and younger. So now this is the demography right now. And this is also how our engagement do on Instagram. We have the gender is mostly a woman compared to men, because again it's very casual and very light. So most our subscribers are women, and also they're focused on big cities like Jakarta or Yogyakarta or Bandung. But we're trying to expand our readers into more like other areas in Indonesia. This is also like on Twitter, and this is how we do our articles. And yeah, I think this is the point where I want to show is on the COVID in our data viz. Data viz is the data visualization on how we see the COVID-19. Like, for example, here we have, are we testing people enough for COVID-19? So instead of we just make the narrative about what are we testing enough, like instead of making argument, we just come up with the data, like how the data speak up. We let just the data speak up. Like, for example, here we have like the comparison between the testing in Indonesia compared to another country. Like, we have a very low. I think this is from April, so it's changed a lot for now, but we do have like for this one, Indonesia has the lowest testing capacity compared to another country, but then it grows. Like for now, I think it's way better. And also this is how, also on the right, if you see it, like there's also, we have the comparison with other countries, and how the number turns into, like you can see the positive, the new cases. Is just like to give the idea, because normally when we talk about the number of COVID or everything, it's just very focused on the narrative or what the government say, instead of what the data actually says. So my co-founder, he was a data scientist from Harvard, and he helped me come up with it. So yeah, this is what we've been doing lately. So this one is about the testing, and the next one is, we have this big question, like are we ready to face the COVID-19? So like I think also this is from March, so it's a while back ago, but we do have the number every day. We have the comparison every day here about the increase of the COVID number. It still shows that the increase had been not steadily, but it's scarily higher every day, and it also like it doesn't get slower, it just gets all the way up, so it's very concerning. And so by seeing this data, we expect that people will be more cautious about their social distancing and how they cope health uh, with the health situation. And also on the right, this one I think is also very important, because one of another problem that us Indonesian face when we are dealing with Corona is, beside the fact that we have more growing number, we also have lack of healthcare infrastructure. As you can see here, the red one is we compared the number of the new cases with the number of the citizens that we have, and it's also very low. Like we can see the comparison is very different, especially when you compare it with other countries, say in Indonesia, the differences is very stark compared to like a lot of way more developed country like South Korea or Germany. Well, obviously they're more developed than us, but also like when you see like Iran or China is also they very good on it. So like we make the difference, we make the comparison, so our readers can actually see what is it the different compared to in another country. And also we have the data fees. We update the actual data every day since it began. So it's I think around February. We have the number every day, how much the number add up, and how many people die, how many people recovered, and we have the presentation. So every day you can follow up on what is it the figure look like is this COVID thing more happening more everywhere, or it's decreasing. Like you can see how the policy played out compared to the number of cases. We also make the comparison between the province. Also, this is I think this data is from the around June or July. I'm not sure, but yeah, we also have the comparison of each province every day. So every day we updated the dashboard. You can just access it for free, and you can get all the idea from our data visualization. I think that's it for us. When it comes to education, because I have to touch on that right now. I think because also most of our subscribers, they are like 20 like from 17 years old to like around 25 or around 30, even like for the first jobbers, they find it our newsletter is very helpful, because also they have to make papers, or they have to do their assignment, and because our newsletter is very actual, and we also mostly covered all the important information. Like for example, from this morning, we talk about how the UN Security Council come up with the agreement to stop the conflict everywhere in the world for 90 days. That's a very huge decision made by all the biggest country in the world, biggest economic country in the world. So then we explain everything, like how they come up with it, and what does it has an impact with people's life and that kind of thing. So like we get a lot of feedbacks from our subscribers saying that, oh, we didn't know this, and then this is going to be helpful because I'm studying politics at school, or I was studying IR. So like most of our students that are most of our subscribers that are students, they can get that information from us, and that's how we feel that we contribute a little bit to like this COVID situation where students has to study from home. Yeah, I think that's it from me. If you have any question, I'm very open. You can just shoot it, and like I'm gonna return the forum to Leah. Thank you so much for your attention.
Well, thank you so much, Haifa, for presenting your materials. We have a couple of questions here, but we're going to start off with the question that's a little bit of out of context here. So this is from Dr. Esti Royani. My question to Haifa Inaya is, can you tell me about your interesting experiences when you were in the US that related to your teaching and learning processes there?
Oh,
Go ahead.
I actually have a very one interesting experience when I was in Boston because I applied to be a teacher for senior student. So that's actually very interesting because like in Indonesia, senior student they go to pengajian or to majelis taklim, and then that's how they socialize, or that's how they get to know each other, or that's how they like keep their mind working. But I think in the US everything is much more structured. So they have this class. It's named Oli, where um, you can teach students. And so I decided to teach Islam and Indonesia. I have and I have most enrolled class. I think I have around like 45 people. They are all like 70 plus, 70 years old plus. So they're pretty old. And I think I even have some people sits in because they cannot register anymore, just because like it's too many people joining in. So when I asked them why do they took the class, they said because all this time when they heard about Islam, it's just so much about the Middle East, or about the ISIS, Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan, that kind of thing. They never heard about how is it Islam in Indonesia work out, like what is the like how people like this is the biggest the country with the most Muslim population in the world, but like most people when they talk about Islam they only talk about Middle East. So when they see there's a class being offered by Southeast Asian, and by the time like I was just uh, I wasn't just covering my head like this, so I think they find it interesting. So they enrolled in my class, and I teach them just the basic knowledge about Islam that we learn here, like um, rukun iman, rukun Islam, just that kind of thing, like just the very basic things. But it gets them very interesting, and they ask a lot of questions, especially because they're all mostly white people, white, and they live in Boston all their life. They don't really get the idea of like how is it outside of their bubbles. So it's interesting. It's always been a very lively discussion, people asking questions. So yeah, I think that's I think I had the class for about one semester, so it's for 6 months. So for 6 months I teach them about Islam and Indonesia, and I just show them the map of Indonesia. And the next day I will just show them the picture of Kaaba, and I explain them what Kaaba is. It's kind of very interesting.
Wow, that's a pretty interesting experience. Thank you so much for contributing. That's a huge leap, I guess, to the contribution of making a planet, a world, a better place to live, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, another question from Chandra Adiputra. Catch Me Up is a really interesting newsletter, but are there English version news for the international readers?
Oh, okay. Thank you for the question. It's actually a very good one. We don't think about making Catch Me Up for international audience. I think we just want to focus on Indonesia market for now. Simply because even in Indonesia, this kind of news where you can just open your email at 6 and then you get everything you need to know, everything in just one email, is still very weird. Like not a lot of people not a lot of people are very familiar with this idea. So we just want to focus with our product and with our market here in Indonesia. But of course, like we're right now we're on the stage of fundraising and finding investors, which is not good when it's COVID happens. But when things gets better, we definitely open to that to any other ideas. So, yeah.
The next one from Rambe Muhammad. How can we make sure our students care or become interested in things around them? I mean, about the issues. And I think when he says about the issues, he refers to the COVID-19 crisis.
Yeah. So I think, okay, doing this business, doing this newsletter every day, since the COVID-19 began, I think I started to get the pattern or the ideas of how our subscribers read the news. Well, the first and the most important thing is I don't make it sound super stressful, even though the situation is also very stressful actually.
Yeah.
But I try to make it less stressful. Like the wording, I think the key is on the delivery. Like the wording is has to be very casual, and it doesn't gives you additional anxiety attack. It has to be like very light and casual, and also like not a lot of COVID issues. Because like for example, in our newsletter, we have 5 news for a day, and we only have one COVID news. So that's our rule every day, that like in one email newsletter we cannot have that many COVID news, because also it can get people stressed out like with reading that many. And then also, like frankly speaking, the situation hasn't got any better right now. So it's just really on the way, us as the media person, as the media entrepreneur, business person, to be able to deliver it in a way that engaging, and people would like to open it again, and people would like to know more without them have to feel anxious or scared or worry all up because reading of the news. So yeah.
All right. And I think the last question is, who is your most subscribers? Like, are you actually targeting millennials as opposed to seniors? How does it work?
I actually targeting. Oh, the first time when I started Catch Me Up, I actually targeting to first jobbers and adult millennials, people working, because simply I think that working people they're the busiest, right? Because you started your day at like at 5, and then you gotta go to the office, and then you have to be at the office all day, like compared to any other um, age group. But then when we see the pattern, like when we see the data of our subscribers, we notice that our subscriber gets more younger. Like now we have people subscribe with their email schools, with their school's email. So we have like at itb.ac, or like ugm.ac, ui.ac. So it's kind of interesting to find that, oh, our subscribers gets younger. And then later on, we also find that a lot of high school students that just like doing their national entrance today is also our subscribers. So we notice that our subscribers also gets younger, which is also very good then, because we can get engage them from the fairly earlier age. And I think the key to this is because we make our sounding or our editorial writing or journalism is very casual and very young. So like when you read our writing, you will just know that this is just something written by someone like 25 years old or something like that. So I think the key is on the difference. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you think not targeting, by having more millennials subscribing to your newsletters, do you think it can help change the situation when it comes to COVID-19 crisis in Indonesia?
Yeah, I do actually. I think the idea is also because I noticed that, because I'm in politics for since I graduated from my undergrad. So I've been doing politics a lot. Like I've become a consultant, and I become a media engagement officer, that kind of thing. So one thing that I noticed is that millennials now tends to not interested in politics, but I know that we have to get them engaged, because if we don't get people understand or willing to know about politics, then we won't have a working democracy system. We won't have a working check and balance system. So but then I know that when this group of millennials, they tend to be, they're very busy. They have to go to school, they have to go to university and to meet people, meeting friends. They don't have time to catch up with news. So by creating Catch Me Up, I think the way is to educate the younger person, the younger generation, that when they reading news and they find out, this is so sleepy, like I cannot get all the ideas, I cannot get all the wording, is so complicated. I really just want to diminish those limitations and make it like easier for them to follow the news without actually having to have headache when they reading it. So yeah, it's been our main idea to targeting to millennials.
Sounds like you have done a great progress with your Catch Me Up. I wish you, you know, better and better luck in the future. And I guess that wraps up questions for Haifa Inaya. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover, Haifa?
No, I'm good. I just wish everyone happy and healthy, and don't forget to subscribe to Catch Me Up.
Right. When it comes to Catch Me Up, I'm a subscriber myself for a couple of months now. Thank you so much for the newsletter. I would highly recommend it to everyone because it can help you get updated on the latest national and international issues, especially if you hate televisions. That's a very good activity, right?
That's true.
Thank you so much, Haifa, on behalf of IAIN Padangsidimpun and the Center for Language Development. I wish we can work later again in the future, like Sierra. And you're welcome to stay tuned, but you're also welcome to log out if you want. Now we're gonna move on to the last speaker, Pak Sojon Rambe. Are you ready, Pak?
Yeah, I'm here.
You're here, okay. So let's give the time over to Pak Sojuan Rambe to explain his materials. Go ahead, Pak.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, thank you, moderator, again. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam
Waalaikumsalam
warahmatullahi
warahmatullahi
wabarakatuh.
wabarakatuh.
Yeah, good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Morning, sir.
Sir.
Yeah. It is now midday in Rockhampton, Australia, when I'm leaving now. We have 3 hours difference of time, in which Australia is faster than Indonesia.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. Before this, I have just got a consultation, the online consultation with my supervisor too. So I was a little bit late actually. I didn't follow all the discussion in the seminar. Okay, welcome to my presentation then. Can I share?
Share. Yes, you're welcome to share your slides, sir.
Okay. What's up? Cannot share.
While we're working on the setup, I would like to
Oh yeah, okay.
again
I think
remind
I can.
everyone that you can always post your questions in the chat box. All right, thank you so much.
Can you see my slide now?
Yeah. Yes, we can see your slides.
Okay. This is the title. Again, yeah. The title of my presentation is Shifting Modes and Behaviors for the Future Reality of Education. And I intentionally put this title under our topic today, the digitalization of teaching and learning on the pandemic situation, because I believe that digitalization of education is actually not only for this COVID-19 pandemic, but also for the future education. I mean that after this COVID is over, the digital use of digital technology in education will continue to be used. My presentation will be divided into 2 sections, as it is also suggested by the title. The first is the shifts that the technology made to our education, and then what kind of behavior that we have to make or we have to possess in this kind of situation, or in the future use of technology in education in the future. And then before continuing to the topics, let us see what is digital education is about. What is digital education? In simple definition, we can actually see that digital education refers to the use of technological devices in teaching and learning. We can mention, we can see the pictures of digital devices here from the laptop and then the digital camera, the home, the cell phones, or and then the photocopier, and so on and so on. But I will not especially to make any presentation about the use of these devices other than just to review some uses of the devices. Then no, I mean some practices that actually to some extent use the devices that we are presenting right now. I think I will start to the point. This actually the first dimension of teaching and learning, the teaching itself. From long time ago, we have experienced the teaching process, which is conducted in the classroom, where the teacher presents subjects in front of the class. And today, after this COVID-19, we have been familiar with online teaching, when the teacher present the materials online and the students follow or attend the classroom, attend the class, not classroom, attend the class from the other side. And then learning, there have been some modification of learning too here. The online class, as I have told you before, is related to the teaching activity. And maybe there are a few new things too. Listening to audiobooks. I don't know whether we have been familiar with audiobooks in Indonesia, but audiobooks also, usable for education. When we are feeling bored to read the textbook, we can just listen them by using any kinds of speakers and so on. And then watching video, if you use YouTube, actually, there have been a lot of materials presented in YouTube. I use that sometimes for certain topics, and then it can enforce us to learn. We can just lay down or do any other activities, and the YouTube just go on speaking, and we can catch up a number of knowledge from the YouTube watching. And then the other familiar one is reading electronic books. I think everybody has been familiar with that. And yeah, that's the stuff. Yeah, I also use it in the in my process of education in Australia today. Next, books. I'm sure that the printed book will be outdated. Yeah, this will be outdated. It will be changed to audiobooks that we can listen to other than reading. And then the use of ebooks that we can store in our smartphones and laptops. It's easier to take anywhere, and we can then learn anytime we go and anywhere we live or we are. Then the classrooms. We have been moving from the traditional classroom, especially is this pandemic situation. If we see the first expectation of how digital classroom look like, if you see the first picture here, the digital classroom is a classroom with computers, laptops, and But today, after the pandemic, it's been changed to be no classroom, as the students actually access the class from their homes. And then how works and tasks submitted. It's common to give the students both in the university or in the high schools to give homeworks. The use of email is now have been very familiar. I also do this many times, and in the process of making or writing my thesis, I use it through email. But in the previous section, I also use Moodle. This is, I don't know whether we have been familiar with Moodle, but it is a very useful device or program or site where the teacher can provide all the tasks that the students have to do. At the same time, this is the same site where he can check and assess the quality of the works, and then he can make the assessment and the result of the assessment, and he can also show the achievement or the grades of the student, and the students can check the grades anytime. And then continue to the next slide. Thesis correction. I see it will be more appropriate to university level. We have see here the left side, the traditional correction. I think this is what we still do in Padangsidimpun by using hard copy. But what I am using here is now this online correction. This is from my tutor, not supervisor, online correction, and then we discuss it online too. We are just using Zoom like this. We provide, we share the files, and we discuss many things about it, and then can just that can just work well enough, I think. And then the next slide. Okay. This is the next topic, yeah. The behavior. I know that some people have been very conservative, that they think that the use of digital technology is not appropriate or not beneficial to education. Some people prefer to do the classroom like the traditional classroom. We have the room when we can meet and see each other, we can do discussions. But as we all know, and I think we all agree that the use of technology is now unavoidable, not only in this coronavirus situation, but also in the future. But I think that we have no choice than to accept this. We have to accept that we have to change, and we have to be ready for the change. And the second behavior, or the second attitude that we have to possess, is the familiarity. We have to know all of these stuff. What are they for? And then in what situation we can use or not use the stuff, and we have to think the application of this stuff in our own subjects in our own disciplines. And the last attitude or behavior that we need is the literacy. Literacy means understanding or mastering about how to use all the devices and able to use it properly, including taking the positives of that and taking the positive sides and avoiding the negative sides, because as we all know that this technology actually have the bad stuffs inside, and then we have to avoid them. We focus on taking the positive aspects only, especially this internet by using laptop or smartphones. I think that will be another job that we will think about our education in this digitalization era, because at the time the students access internet, there will be factors or bad stuff that they can acquire that we don't want to, we don't want them to be exposed to, and then that will be another job actually. And I think we are all have to be concerned about it. I think that's all my very short presentation. Yeah, if you have question, then I will be happy to answer. Thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you so much, sir, for the presentation. We have come up with some of the some questions here. The first one is, what other applications that you can recommend to use for lecturers to enrich the quality of online teaching?
Actually, there are many, many applications that we can use, like Skype, but Zoom is actually one is the most popular and also the cheaper. In terms of Zoom is not very much spending your data account if it is compared with Skype or other application. And then the bad stuff about Zoom is that it is not encrypted, and it's sometimes other people can access to the use of the Zoom, and it can be dangerous sometimes. I think like the others, like Google Classroom and so on. I think there are many other things. I think we can see that, but the most application that we are using here, or I wish you my supervisor, is Zoom.
So I think that pretty much the same with IAIN Padangsidimpun, right? That's Zoom is basically used everywhere.
Yeah, because this is cheaper, yeah. This cheaper,
yeah, it's
and
also
yeah,
more affordable, less resources.
Yeah, more participants also can be involved in the session.
Right. The next question is, how do you balance out the inability of skills, technological skills of the senior faculty members with the millennial faculty members? So for example, I'm obviously way younger than, let's say, a 50-year-old lecturer in IAIN Padangsidimpun. So in some cases, this lecturer cannot even access Zoom, cannot even type, the materials into Zoom, right? How do we balance it out?
I'm not quite clear with the question yet. What to balance actually? Excuse me.
Yeah, so obviously there are some professional responsibilities that we have as lecturers, and if you don't have the technological skills that you need to survive this time of crisis in teaching your students online, how do you come up with solutions for for those who don't have enough or sufficient technological skill?
Actually, using Zoom is an alternative, but it will be another question if the person cannot access Zoom. But that's another problem actually. The use of email may be an alternative, or with the use of WhatsApp. I think I know that some lecturers also use WhatsApp for communicating with their students, or for doing the teaching and learning process. But I think that's the problem. WhatsApp cannot do more than, or a lot of participants. As far as I concern, it's just for students only, or for participants only. And of course, it will be problem, yeah, because we cannot do direct teaching, and all we can do is just like doing the other stuff like emailing for the students to do the work online by using email. That's actually an alternative, but that's why I said that we have to be familiar and we have to be competent with these stuffs. And I don't agree that we are in the position of avoiding this digitalization technology. If the problem is that the lecturer say he cannot, he doesn't understand how to use Zoom or another technology, it has been time to learn. We can avoid it, yeah.
So do you think it's fair to say that every lecturer has to have the ability, no matter
They
what?
have to have the ability to use the digital technology in the education.
Right. Thank you so much for the answer. The next question is, what do you think about the digital education between in Indonesia and Australia? I think she's asking, this is from Ingrid Nauli Ramadhani. She's asking about the differences between online teaching, I guess, in Australia and Indonesia, based on your experiences.
I'm not sure what you guys do now in Indonesia, but we are doing here Zooming. Most of the stuff is Zooming for the consultation or the direct teaching. But when we do tasks like homeworks or a kind of sequential steps like writing 1, writing 2, and so on, we do it by using Moodle. Moodle is one of the very popular site that is used for homeworks or doing modules in Australia. I think it is used across the universities in Australia.
Okay. I think she's asking more about the quality of the education itself. How do you think the quality of education in Australia is different from that of Indonesian during the pandemic, during the time of crisis?
If we say quality, I am not thinking that I am competent to say it, yeah, because there are many parameters that we have to apply, like in what rank it is, the university is around the world, in which rank is our country among the countries in the world. So I don't think that I am competent to answer this. But if we concern with the digitalization of education here, I think Australia is more familiar and more ready to face this pandemic situation with digitalization of education rather than Indonesia. But if we say that which one is better and how is better than this, I think that's very non-exact answer, and